The pickpocket was the key to his plan. But would you send a thief to guard your treasure? He was the last one in the world to act like a hero. It just happened by itself. And he was drawn into a magical, romantic adventure. Matthew Broderick, Michelle Pfeiffer, Rutger Hauer, Ladyhawke.
Released in 1985 and directed by Richard Donner, more famously known for helming the original 1978 Superman starring Christopher Reeve, or the famous buddy cop series Lethal Weapon, Ladyhawke was a project the director had struggled for some years to get greenlit. He came close to production twice before finally finding a producer and his future wife, Lauren Scholler, and arranging with Warner Brothers and 20th Century Fox to finance and release the film in domestic and international markets, respectively. With a screenplay co-written in various drafts by Edward Kamara, Michael Thomas, David Peoples, and frequent Donner collaborator Tom Mankiewicz, the movie was filmed in Italy, with the production making extensive use of location shooting within and around some amazing settings, including real medieval castles from the era, adding an extra level of realism to the movie, as very few moments seem to have been shot in studio by comparison. Ladyhawke, like many of its 80s contemporaries, is often branded a sword and sorcery flick. And though it's without a doubt a fantasy fairy tale, much of the movie to me, in spite of the mystical curse that is central to the plot, feels just a little more grounded than many of the other flicks it's often lumped together with. Also, Richard Donner has a filmmaking philosophy centered around verisimilitude, or the idea of presenting something as grounded or more believable. Playing the first lead we're introduced to in the tale, the young pickpocket Philippe the Mouse, is Matthew Broderick, who was chosen as the comedic relief/lead through which the audience first enters the story. Broderick got the role after other names, including Sean Penn and Dustin Hoffman, were considered. In the film, Philippe the Mouse is a prisoner within the infamous dungeons of Aquila. But on the day he is to be hung by the guards,
hanged,
they discover that the mouse has escaped. Digging his way through the drain and into the sewers beneath the city, he eventually escapes, but the Bishop of Aquila, the film's primary antagonist, played by John Wood, sends his captain of the guard, a man called Marquet, played by Ken Hutchison, to hunt him down. It's been said that both Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones and Sean Connery were initially considered for these respective roles. Meanwhile, a dark, mysterious figure, traveling alone except for his trusted horse,
his name is Goliath,
and a hawk he always keeps close, is also about to cross paths with the mouse, rescuing him from Marquet and his men when they inevitably catch up to him. This other male lead of the film, Navarre, is played by the late, great Rutger Hauer, a grim-natured, disgraced Black Knight who has taken an interest in Philippe, believing the young thief's escape from the inescapable dungeons of Aquila as a sign from God.
You will be my guiding angel.
Sir, the truth is I talk to God all the time. And no offense, but he never mentioned you.
Navarre intends for the mouse to lead him back into the city, where he can kill the bishop.
The bishop!
For reasons he does not yet make clear. The role of Navarre was originally cast with Jack Burton himself.
Who? Jack Burton. Me.
Kurt Russell. But he pulled out of the production during rehearsals, and Hauer was his replacement. And even he was initially offered the antagonist role of Marquet, but perhaps because of having played more villainous roles in the past. Like my personal favorite, his brilliant performance in the film Blade Runner as the antagonist Roy Batty.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
He turned it down, finding more interest in the good guy role this time around. In fact, something interesting of note that was pointed out by the director is how he deliberately chose to have the main hero of the film clothed all in black, whereas the main antagonist was clothed all in white. Sort of an interesting reversal from the norm, don't you think? While traveling with Navarre, rather reluctantly in the beginning, Philippe soon meets a mysterious and beautiful woman named Isabeau, who only appears at night along with a large, black wolf that is never far away. Played in an earlier role by Michelle Pfeiffer, Philippe soon learns that she is the titular Ladyhawke when the hawk is injured, and he is sent by Navarre to enlist the healing aid of an old drunken monk named Imperius.
He's kind of a strange old hermit.
Played by Leo McKern, who becomes our major source of exposition during this point in the film. An important figure from Navarre and Isabeau's past, Philippe soon learns that he is caught up in something far greater than himself. The corrupt and wicked bishop,
The bishop!
driven by a deep and jealous obsession with Isabeau, called upon the dark powers of hell to place a curse upon she and her beloved, ensuring that if he couldn't have her, then no man shall. And so,
as you have already guessed, the voice of the wolf that we hear is the cry of Navarre.
Always together, eternally apart.
there is one way, and one way only, for this eternal curse to be broken. And that is, if somehow Navarre and Isabeau could confront the bishop together in human form. But how? If you haven't seen this 80s gem for yourself, then go watch it after this Kernel review. Swear to me.
I swear it on my life.
Also appearing in an earlier role is Alfred Molina, who most probably recognize best as Dr. Octopus in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, or, ironically, the Spider Guy at the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. The movie was a financial bomb, unfortunately.
Don't you say that!
Making approximately $18 million on a $20 million budget, having a mixed critical reception that leaned toward the mainly positive, even receiving the 2 thumbs up seal of approval from Siskel and Ebert at the time, both of whom believed the movie had the potential to achieve long-lasting success in its genre. Now considered a cult classic by many, I'd venture to say they were right, even if it's one of those movies I've only ever met a handful of people who have actually seen it. One particular element of Ladyhawke that has gone down in history as particularly divisive among critics and fans alike, however, is its soundtrack. Love it, hate it, or somewhere in between. Composed by Andrew Powell and produced/performed by
the Alan Parsons Project.
The soundtrack mixes some traditional orchestration with heavy use of synth and rock instrumentation, creating something that was intended to inject a bit of contemporary fun into the proceedings, for good or ill, depending on who you ask. At least around the time of the movie's release, Rutger Hauer was one of its defenders.
Do you like the music?
Yeah? You don't, huh?
Oh, no, I'm just saying that it's different.
Not...
It's different.
Uh-huh.
It's contemporary.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. I like that. It would be too obvious. It would become too serious. It gives it a lightness.
Donner had once explained that while spending lengthy time scouting locations for the movie, he would listen to the Alan Parsons Project, and the musical stylings became synonymous for him to the beautiful vistas, rugged landscapes, and crumbling castles he visited during that time. For me, having seen Ladyhawke at such a super young age, I have such a deeply nostalgic attachment to the movie and associate the accompanying music so closely to it that it's similarly hard for me to imagine the score being any other way. But, speaking objectively,
I object, Your Honor.
I feel like the score comes across as too anachronistic at times, where the traditional orchestration is overpowered by the synths that were oh so popular at the time. As a result, I feel the film, which holds up remarkably well after over 3 decades, is rather dated in this one department, whereas perhaps with something more traditional, it could have endured as a more timeless example. That being said, as I mentioned before, I have a very soft spot for it, and like the previous 2 Kernel reviews, I have grown up watching Ladyhawke.
Ladyhawke.
The rest of the production design is magnificent, however, and the visuals more than make up for any of its musical shortcomings. And though the effects aren't necessarily at the highest bar of the time, the budget obviously was used to great effect elsewhere, and the optical visuals that are used are cleverly constructed and perfectly suited to the tone and style of the movie. Though there's been some negative talk about the movie's pacing, which clocks at around 2 hours, it does indeed take many breaths throughout, but primarily for character development, exposition, and such, all of which enrich the story in this case, in my opinion. And in fact, I've heard other reviews argue that more of the runtime could have been spent on backstory. I, however, prefer the way in which the audience is thrown into the mix along with Philippe, and must discover what is going on in the plot just as he does. Though there's some decent action scenes, the movie doesn't fall strictly into one genre and plays it fairly straight, with doses of comedy throughout and more than a bit of drama. Yes, it's fantasy, but definitely not high fantasy, and is more of a grounded romantic medieval fairy tale. Though not super obscure, it's remained relatively unnoticed by many as time has gone by, and I think it's a film that definitely deserves some more attention. So, why not grab some popcorn and settle in for an entertaining watch? Dated in some departments for sure, but otherwise, it's an adventure that shouldn't be missed.
You're right.
It's not unlike escaping Mother's womb. God, what a memory.